First at 4 continues.
The economy is growing, consumers are spending, and inflation is cooling. That is according to a new economic report from the Commerce Department. CBS's Jill Schlesinger explains it's one of 3 crucial reports out this week leading up to Election Day.
The economy is the #1 issue for voters in recent polls. The most common concern, higher prices.
When we get the final bill, it's like sometimes it's still a shock.
Inflation is it's getting the best of a lot of us.
But new data from the U.S. Commerce Department finds what consumers are feeling has not impacted how they're spending. The economy grew 2.8% over the summer, thanks in large part to Americans opening up their wallets.
And what's funny about that is you think about every single poll that says, I feel lousy about prices and the economy. And yet, in this report, we learned that consumers spent at an annualized pace of 3.7%.
CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger says robust consumer spending, despite higher prices, is likely what has kept the U.S. out of a recession.
It looks like we're getting this so-called soft landing. High inflation met with higher interest rates without causing the economy to crater.
The report also found more signs of cooling inflation. September data on inflation and spending drops Thursday. Then Friday, October data on wages and employment. Employers are expected to have hired 120,000 workers. But recent hurricanes and the East Coast port strike might drag those numbers down. The Federal Reserve will consider all of it when it meets next week. Economists expect they'll cut interest rates 1/4 percentage point and may do it again in December. Danya Backus, CBS News.
Starbucks wants its corporate workers back in the office. 2 years ago, the company mandated staff to be in office 3 days a week. Now a spokesman says Starbucks will start cracking down on employees who defy the policy. The new policy is set to start at the beginning of the year. Other companies, including Amazon, are also requiring employees to stop working from home despite pushback from staff. The 2024 presidential candidates are continuing their final push towards Election Day. Today, both make stops in North Carolina and Wisconsin, with an additional stop by Vice President Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania. Yesterday, Vice President Harris saw her largest campaign crowd yet as she laid out her final arguments in the shadow of the White House. Today, she is facing questions about remarks made by President Joe Biden. The president is trying to walk back those comments that he made on a call with a Hispanic advocacy group where he called Trump supporters garbage. Republicans quickly highlighted the remarks, and the Trump campaign said President Biden and Vice President Harris despised Trump supporters. President Biden later posted on X that he meant to say the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico was garbage. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump was in Allentown, Pennsylvania yesterday, which has a large Puerto Rican community. There, he continued to try to distance himself from comments made by a comedian at his Sunday rally in which he called Puerto Rico an island of garbage. Well, we want to remind you early in-person voting in Kentucky starts tomorrow, October 31st. Mail-in absentee ballots must be received by 6 p.m. on Election Day, November 5th, to be counted. And if you are registered to vote, you can find election guides, polling locations, and sample ballots at govote.ky.gov.
We're looking at this wonderful afternoon. We have those nice temperatures, but is there any rain? Well, taking a look at that satellite and radar, it's nice and clear, not much going on. A little bit of something maybe if you are in Campbell County, Tennessee, but overall it's just going to be a wonderful afternoon. As you look out at WYMT Studios, you can see it's quite a nice day, 77 degrees as you're heading out the door. Nice dew point, leaving the humidity to be quite low, making the high temperatures quite enjoyable as you're heading out. Those current temperatures for the rest of the area, well, about the same. Some places a little warmer. 82 for Somerset even, 80 for Monticello, and 80 for Manchester. So again, it's going to be a warm afternoon. We will be cooling down to an overnight low, so if you're not enjoying this warm weather, don't worry, it will get down. We're seeing the 50-degree range, upper 50s, in some places hitting that 60-degree mark. 60 for Hazard and Prestonsburg, 62 as you head into Jackson. But we will be warming up once again into your Halloween with these temperatures being quite high, still staying in the upper 70s. But some relief is on the way. I'll have more information on that and your ARH 7-day forecast in just a couple of minutes. Steve?
All right, Megan, thanks. It is a somber anniversary of a law officer's death in southern Kentucky. 2 years ago today, Sergeant Logan Medlock died when a drunk driver crashed into his cruiser. It happened in London just moments after Sergeant Medlock's shift began. WYMT's Phil Pendleton has more on how Medlock is being remembered today.
Later this evening, family, friends, law enforcement officers, and others will gather here at this spot where Sergeant Logan Medlock passed away not long after his shift began on the night of October 30th, 2022.
Our job to make sure nobody forgets the name Logan Medlock.
Sergeant Logan Medlock was honored numerous times for pulling over drunk drivers, but on the night of October 30th, exactly 2 years ago today, a drunk driver crashed into his cruiser not long after Medlock had stated he wanted to go find another to get off the streets. He leaves behind a legacy people say is not easy to match.
I mean, his legacy is always going to be how godly of a man he was, how good of a father and a husband that he was, and just an excellent police officer and public servant to this community.
His memory is kept alive with a memorial walk like this one, along with what's going to be an annual fishing tournament. So
it's just a way that we can continue to help support the family and the community through these various events that we have. Casey Bird remains in the Laurel County Detention Center. He is currently awaiting to be transferred to a state prison in the Department of Corrections system. A jury convicted him of murder, DUI, and other charges and gave him a 20-year sentence. In Laurel County, Phil Pendleton, now back to you.
The Laurel County jailer says that Bird will soon be transferred to a state-run prison in the Department of Corrections. It has now been almost 2 months since a Clark County teenager was hit and killed by a school bus. The Clark County coroner says 15-year-old McKenna Leer was crossing Veterans Memorial Parkway when she was hit. Today, for the first time, we are hearing from the family's attorney, John Holland. As Samantha Valentino shows us, McKenna's family has big plans to honor her legacy.
McKenna Leer's family says they aren't ready to go on camera and speak just yet, but they did provide us a written statement, writing in part, quote, "Kenna exemplified kindness. Our family strives each and every day to show love like Kenna did."
For a family, for a parent, it's absolutely their worst nightmare to lose a child and to lose a child like this.
John Holland is the attorney representing McKenna Leer's family. The Clark County coroner says she was crossing Veterans Memorial Parkway in Winchester when she was hit and killed by a school bus.
What I can say is that we know with certainty that Kenna nearly crossed the road safely and that she should still be here today. The family wishes she was here. She was a joyful, beautiful soul who had so much going for her in life. We know that she should still be here today. And as far as the legal process, we're going to let that play out.
In the meantime, Holland says McKenna's family wants to give back to the community that has done so much to support them through this tragedy.
She would have celebrated her 16th birthday in January. Her family intends to continue celebrating her birthday and legacy each year as they look for more ways to give back in her name, more ways to spread that joy, to spread that light that she so did for everyone that she encountered.
Beginning this Christmas, McKenna's family is starting a program to help teenagers in need in honor of McKenna. If you know a family you think could use their help, you're asked to reach out to John Holland's office. In Lexington, Samantha Valentino, WKYT.
Turning now to the Middle East, where Israel says it is looking into the circumstances of an airstrike in Gaza that Hamas says left 93 people dead or missing, including dozens of children. The U.S. has called yesterday's attack, quote, horrifying. CBS's Holly Williams has more from Tel Aviv and a warning. This report contains some graphic footage.
An Israeli strike shattered this multi-story building. And according to Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry, many of those killed were women and children. More small bodies, shrouded, piled up and carried away on a cart. Death is commonplace in Gaza, but that doesn't blunt the pain. Tens of displaced people were living in the house, said this man. As you can see, body parts are hanging on the walls. The US says it's deeply concerned and has asked Israel for an explanation.
This was a horrifying incident with a horrifying result. I can't speak to the total death toll, but there are reports of 24 children killed in this incident. It is another reminder of why we need to see an end to this war.
Israel says its ongoing offensive in northern Gaza is targeting militants who've regrouped there. The result, according to the United Nations, is, quote, harrowing levels of death and destruction.
Israel's parliament voted on Monday to bar the United Nations agency that helps Palestinians from operating in this country. Israel alleges that the agency has been infiltrated by Hamas in Gaza. And earlier this year, the UN dismissed several staff members accused of taking part in the October 7th attacks. But the US says that it is deeply troubled by the Israeli legislation. Holly Williams, CBS News, Tel Aviv, Israel.
Coming up on First at 4.